Good evening, everybody. It's 7 p.m. and I'm going to call the meeting to order. We have a quorum, and we are going to be missing a couple board members tonight for health reasons, and we expect one board member to still show up in person. But let's get started, and the first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. So is there anybody who would like to speak during public comment? Has anybody called in? Janet? Okay, is there anybody who would like to speak during public comment who's in this room? Okay, seeing none, we're going to keep moving on. I'll entertain a motion to approve the Board of Education meeting minutes for July 14th.
So moved.
Moved by Brendan, seconded by Katina. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, those are approved. We have a bunch of reports under the superintendent's section of the agenda tonight. That's the meatiest part of our agenda until we get down to the action items. So I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Youngberg to walk us through.
Thank you very much, Lynn. Okay, the first part of the report had to do with what the State Department of Ed and the Department of Public Health had put out in terms of our school reopening plan. When we created the Board of Ed packet, they had not yet released the information. They had only shared it with us, and it wasn't for distribution. Since then, they have put out a packet, which will be out on our website tomorrow, that goes through each of the mitigation strategies as they currently see them to be in place for the fall. So you all have a copy in front of you. This can be shared. It's been officially approved at this point. What continues to be their message is that there's a suite of mitigation strategies. There's several things that you do to keep yourself safe from transmitting the virus. It's not any one thing, it's multiple things. Their biggest prevention strategy at this point that they keep repeating to us over and over again is to get vaccinated. Because if you're vaccinated, it gives us the opportunity to reduce the case rates, to reduce the likelihood you're going to become severely ill if you get the virus, and of course it saves people from dying from the virus. So that's their message. They want to continually provide opportunities for vaccinations to be accessible. And there's a big focus on what they call vaccination equity to make sure that the underrepresented populations and those that aren't often able to have access to something like a vaccine can indeed get them. And the school system has at least been providing opportunities for people to get vaccinated. I want to just reinforce the fact that vaccination is not required by the school system for staff or students. We're not requiring the vaccine, but we are following the science and recommending that if you so choose, that we provide opportunities for people to get the vaccine, because we do see it, as the epidemiologists and medical professionals have said, as the #1 prevention strategy. As it stands right now, if you go through your packet, the next page is mask use. As it stands right now, we will be in masks, and you'll notice we're all in masks tonight. We've actually moved back in central office, which is the only place where we weren't in masks before, because all of our schools are still following the current mask mandate. But the central office group, which when we weren't in contact with the public or in contact with students, we were for a short period of time not in masks. We've decided to go back to masks, which I think is going to be sort of a common theme you're going to see now as the CDC is concerned by transmission rates. So masks, it looks like, will be in place next year for the opening of the school year. And although they're saying that we can probably get away with not wearing masks outdoors, we're still waiting on the finalized wording on mask use. So you'll see on that page that they are saying that the finalized version of the mask mandate will be out in the coming weeks. So they haven't landed on exactly how that's going to be presented. The next page is distancing and cohorting. The social distance recommendations has changed from 6 feet to 3 feet. We are going to do our best to meet the 3-foot social distance requirements. I can tell you though, and the Department of Public Health supports this, they believe the benefits of in-person learning far outweigh the negative piece if you're not able to reach the 3-foot social distance. So we are not going to be shutting down schools because we can't meet the 3-foot social distance, and that is what they're telling school systems. Keep your schools open, fully in person, and do the best you can to meet the social distancing requirements. The next piece, I'm still working on gathering information about this. That's the mitigation strategy entitled screening, testing. It's a little complicated, but they're proposing that school systems set up a weekly testing option for families that choose to have their children tested. And I saw someone's eyes just open wide. It is what I think a different kind of request of a school, because we're not a medical facility. But I am gathering information to make sure that our families in Windham have access to testing. We have not opted in, and I haven't even had a discussion with the Board of Ed about it. We've, not opted in or out. We're just gathering information, but this is something that they're proposing schools consider. For me, personally, I'll just share my thoughts with you while we're here. If there's access to testing in other locations in the community, I would prefer our families to use those locations, because they're suggesting that we set up a testing site in our cafeteria or in our hallways. And to me, that's just one more distraction that is far removed from teaching and learning, and I'm not sure we want to take that on. I'm open to hear the board's feedback on it, and of course, I'm making sure I have all the information about where our families can access testing before any decisions are made. But this is a new mitigation strategy that they've just proposed, and it's focused on those students that are not vaccinated and those students that are below the age of being, below 12 years old and being able to get vaccinated. So we're talking about our youngest, our littles, that would be potentially tested each week with their parents' permission. But there's definitely, could be potentially a controversial strategy, so there's more discussions going to have to come around that.
Are there any questions that people have about that? Because up to this point, everything's been pretty much what we're used to hearing. So does anybody have any questions, or do you want to hold until Dr. Youngberg gathers more information?
I did reach out today through email to the town's emergency group that has the police, the fire department, town manager, all your local medical facilities are involved, and I just wanted to get a list of where testing options are available in town. And I know the school system could even help with transportation, getting families to those locations. So I just want to know what our options are before we say yes to this new interesting mitigation strategy. Ventilation continues to be something that DPH wants us. Oh, I'm sorry,
Did
Katina.
you want to say something, Katina? You don't have to hold it.
Okay,
Just push it.
different than the town hall, sorry.
Yes.
I remember Hartford Healthcare at some point had like a van that would go to neighborhoods.
Yes.
And maybe,
There is a mobile vaccination and testing
or testing,
unit. Yep.
so maybe that can go to neighborhoods also.
It's another possibility, absolutely.
Thank you.
So ventilation continues to be on our radar. The state is suggesting that we continue our ventilation study, sort of recommission the professionals around how our HVAC system is working. And so Dawn Tomakis, our Director of Facilities, is already looking into finding another agency or firm to do the next commission, and they'll give us an update on how well we met the requirements or the recommendations of the last commission and move us forward.
Can I ask a question about that right now?
Yes.
Yeah, is that different than, so last year when we hired a firm to come in and help us implement the recommendations that were given to us, correct?
That is correct.
And then, so this is just taking what we did thus far and going,
Yes,
That-
the state is suggesting that we continue our work in making certain that all of the HVAC systems are functioning to the highest capacity. So they want us to have another study done, or they want us to at least consider having another study done. So Dawn's in the process of getting quotes to figure out what that will cost, and we'll move from there.
I would guess with our old buildings, we can never do too many check-ins on.
It
What
can't
we're
hurt,
doing.
right? Okay. We move on to cleaning, disinfecting, and hygiene. One of the things that they have discovered after all these months studying the virus is that it's very unlikely that it's being passed on surfaces. So they've told us we do not need to keep up with the disinfecting to the extent it was being done last school year. Simple cleaning, routine daily cleaning will be enough, and they would like us to focus the specific disinfection on bathrooms, places where exposure might be known, or the health offices, or isolation rooms if we end up having isolation rooms. And the next page in the document addresses isolation, quarantine, and contacts. There is some differences to who's being quarantined and why. They've eased up a little bit. First of all, they removed the 6-foot social distancing requirement to be identified as a close contact because they changed the requirement. And they also are stating that anyone who's vaccinated, even if you're named as a close contact, as long as you're asymptomatic, you do not need to quarantine. So that's a change as well. So we're hoping, because we know from our own data that we analyzed pretty significantly, that we sent a lot of students and staff home on quarantine because they were identified as close contacts, but they did not come back as positive for the virus. And Suzanne Craw is shaking her head. She supervises our school nurses and is an active member of the COVID team. So we had discussions about this pretty much every single day, multiple times a day. So they have changed some of those rules, and I'm actually happy about that. I think that that's a good thing. We don't need to miss school and be taken away if there isn't a benefit to doing it. And we did not find that in nearly 1,100 student cases, and we did a lot of work last year. So we felt like the data is on our side in this one. In terms of sports and extracurricular activities, the State Department of Public Health is suggesting that we move forward on all fall sports, that they have a full season. They would like us to be outside if that's possible. So most of the fall sports are outside, so that should be easy to meet. The one place where they said that there probably wouldn't be any changes to last year is music instruction. There's still some pretty significant risk in singing in front of other people and playing instruments, so they suggested that we make sure we have the special masks that they make for people who play instruments. They have an overlap so your instrument fits in and there's not things coming out. And bell covers for the fronts of certain instruments to stop aerosol from coming out of the instruments. And they suggested, if it's possible for you to put up a tent outside where the kids could potentially play in a more open space than they might have inside. So we'll be making some adjustments and adding some mitigation strategies to help our music instruction continue, because it really did take a hit last year. And then just a couple other considerations that they addressed. One of them is that there's a current mandate by the CDC to have masks on in all of our school buses and any public transportation. So we're actually scheduling a training with our bus drivers that will include COVID information, as well as just positively interacting with the students in Windham. That's coming up in August. So we'll make sure the bus companies are well aware of the mask mandate, as well as our students and families. We are going to be reviewing our visitors policies. It's my feeling we have to closely monitor who comes in and out of our buildings for safety, but if we're able to bring all the kids back in person, which is our plan, then we should be able to have visitors in the building as well. We just have to have specific procedures in place. And there's no changes to recess or PE classes. And I think that's I've summed it up for you. The last piece is just, the last page of the document is just getting into, as I said, the music instruction piece, as well as potentially making adjustments to the way you roll out your lunches and breakfasts. We obviously want the kids to be fed always, but we want to make sure that the school day is able to function. So there potentially could be some adjustments that they can make. They would like us to consider adding some lunch waves, and they said that there's even the possibility of serving larger meals less frequently. So if we serve breakfast and then 3 hours later we serve lunch, is there some way they wanted us to consider to serve one large meal that the kids could have with them? I'm not really sure. I feel like it may have been a discussion that was had by someone who's not actually been in a school to watch it happen. But it's something that they told us to consider, so we're considering it. So,
Like if you serve a turkey dinner at 10 a.m., that
right,
could suffice
or
for
if they
two-
take food with them that they could eat later, but I don't see it working. And having have been particularly in an elementary school, I just think it could create a lot of issues. So, but they said for us to consider it, so that's what we're doing, is just thinking about it.
Isn't that counter, though, to all the science about how important breakfast is?
Oh, no, they didn't want them to stop eating. They just said we didn't necessarily have to think about all the different lunch waves. Like, could we figure out how to serve them less frequently with more food? I don't know. I'm just telling you that's, yeah. That's the least of our worries, honestly and truly, so. Any other questions?
Mary?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment because this is even the case nationally that, last time we didn't have masks and now we're back to masks. And it is somewhat a function of the mutations and the more highly infectious version that is out there. And the more people who get infected, the more the virus has an ability to transmute itself and become more successful as a virus, which is bad for us. So I just wanted to say that this is not the final word. We are clearly going to get updates, and I know it can be frustrating. I was really looking forward myself to teaching without a mask this fall, but it seems like I will be teaching with a mask. So, this and the fact that you have presented this information, next meeting, there could be some new guidelines. So that's just something for everyone to keep in mind.
That is absolutely true, and they've actually said the same thing, that we should be prepared like last year for things to change frequently. So this is just the beginning of their recommendations, and obviously it really could change multiple times before the schools actually open. So I just wanted to bring you up to speed on where we are right now.
The other thing to keep in mind, in addition to what Mary just said, is that of all the counties in the state, Windham County is the farthest behind in the percentage of people who are vaccinated. So we actually have to do better in this county trying to encourage people to get vaccinated.
So you meant county, the Windham County, 13
The whole
towns
county.
or 16 towns.
But if you look at the state website, it has the county by county breakdown. And they also have identified on that website, there's a map that has town by town breakdown. So, like for instance, Franklin is red right now, a red town. So, that could mean one family in Franklin, because they're so small, has COVID. But it is of concern. And so people who are watching what we're doing at the Board of Ed here need to understand that in addition to everything that's going on, we're lagging behind the rest of the state in getting people vaccinated. So it's a fact that we have to deal with. And I'm going to just say that if people want to complain about the return of the masks, this is what's going to keep happening. It's not going to go away by magic.
I was just asking to clarify because some people don't understand that the town of Windham is within the county of Windham. And I get a lot of confusion with that, not personally, but others. That's why I asked for clarification, that it includes other towns also.
Other towns in the quiet corner here.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you.
Any other questions about the interim recommendations for reopening schools?
Oh, I also wanted to add that, the federal government is now requiring certain employees to be vaccinated, and New York City. So I also want to mention that this could happen. This could happen in our state too. So, and some professional organizations are saying they want that to be enacted. So it isn't present now, but it could be. So it's a very fluid situation.
Any other questions? Okay.
I was so hoping we wouldn't have to spend time at board meetings hearing about COVID protocols, but it looks like we're moving back in that direction.
We're going to try to balance the COVID protocols, health and safety, and teaching and learning. That's the goal, right? So moving on in my report, the board members were provided with a list of goals that we're setting for the 21-22 school year, as well as some the core strategies or core initiatives we hope to tackle, assuming everything goes as planned and we're actually fully in person and doing the things we're supposed to do in 21-22. What I hope to do by the retreat and possibly before then is to provide a brand new or fully updated strategic plan document that will have the information about each of these core initiatives and how we plan to measure them and what we hope will be accomplished if we meet those goals. So I've just provided the board with information for you to ask questions or to think about, and then we're going to dig a little deeper into them when we get to the board retreat.
Is there anybody who has any questions about that part of our packet now? Mary?
I just want to say those look like some very exciting goals.
Some of them are really exciting. Some shifts in teaching and learning that I think are going to motivate our students and our staff members and bring some life back to our classrooms. In spite of COVID or even with COVID around. So, any other questions on that?
Just want to say it reflects a lot of work, and I look forward to being able to unpack some of this when we get together as a board at the retreat. So.
The next part of the report was a list of the responses that we've received so far from the community, from staff, from parents, from families, from community members about how they believe the ARP ESSER funds should be spent. That the email that we dedicated to getting their feedback as well as the survey is still open until the end of the month. Once we close that down, sometime over the next few days, we will gather all of the responses that are in there. And again, I want to talk anyone who's at home. You are welcome to call in at the back end, the public comment at the end of the meeting, and share any places or any specific ways you think we should spend the ARP ESSER funds. Part of that application that we have to put in at the end of August is we are required to prove that we ask the community for feedback as to how they think the funds should be spent. So you'll notice in that very lengthy list there are a lot of overlaps. Staff members are asking for the same thing that family members are asking for. It's community members. It's pretty clear. Like one, for example, increased staffing is something that's a common theme and repeated multiple times here. They want to see that our schools are adequately staffed to support our students. So, family liaisons, connections to the families, absolutely. So we are going to take the feedback from the community into consideration when we're building the plan. My plan is to gather all this information together, to connect it with what we've already been thinking about as a leadership team, and present to the board our basic ideas, and then get feedback from you. And I'm open to having feedback if you already know there's something you'd like me to be aware of. And then once we have sort of an idea of where everyone would like to see the district go in terms of spending this money, then we'll put the application in and start the funds coming to us. Right, Rita? Are there any questions?
I just want to say they're such thoughtful suggestions, so I'm very impressed.
And we're going to give you, I know Janet has said we're going to give you the actual responses so you can see some of them really did take a great amount of time to share with us why they thought we should be doing some of these things. They really did. There's one of the emails that I received that it stands out on my mind. It was multiple pages of just someone sharing all the reasons why they think that, why would they like to see the district tackle all of these improvements and the reasons why. So people did take a lot of time to explain themselves.
That is really encouraging to hear, because it would be so easy for people just to say, oh, I don't have time to do that. That's great.
Okay, the next item in my report, if there's no more questions about ARP ESSER funds, I'm going to actually let Mr. Weathers address. And that is that we are receiving staff from the Spanish consulate. You all set there?
I'm ready to go.
Okay, all right.
All right.
Thanks,
Sorry.
Dave. That's okay.
I think I went past my, there we go. All right, so as it says in the packet, this past spring and summer, 10 teachers from Spain were hired to teach in Windham Public Schools. They were hired in part with the Spanish consulate, and I'm going to say the name wrong, but the Cordell something group. I'm looking over Beth Bernay, who, by the way, is our new Director of Equity and Multilingual Education. But in conjunction, they're the sponsors for our teachers that we hired this past spring and summer. The teachers are going to be teaching at Sweeney, Windham Center, North Windham, Natchog, and actually our middle school and high school. They will be working as interventionists and dual language classroom teachers. And the idea is the J1 Visa Visitor Program is to promote cultural exchange among countries and allow teachers to work in our district for up to 3 years. A network of community hosts. I'm looking at people in the room that may be doing that, and they're nodding their heads. Volunteer to work with these teachers and their families to help provide a warm welcome by offering friendship experiences and community connections. Many thanks go out to our community volunteers. I was just talking to one very recently about some of the things that are getting set up. It's pretty exciting. And I just wanted to mention that Amy Finn-Smith and Laura Perez-Handler have been meeting via Zoom with them, and I know Beth joined yesterday in a meeting on a weekly basis, getting them prepared and all the things that come involved with like leaving your country. Some of them are bringing their children with them. Some of them will be in our pre-K, potentially some of our schools as well. So it's a big change, but we're very excited because it's helping us staff our dual language and bilingual education, like, you know, similar like math, science, other areas is a shortage area for us. So this is one recruitment strategy that we're trying to employ that we learned about that other districts in the state have tried. So we're trying it out. And we are pretty happy that we have the number we have because we think that's going to help build a little community of those teachers so they don't feel isolated and alone when they're away from their country. So that's pretty exciting. And we're just really excited. They're arriving in August at different times. I think many of them are coming via Boston, you know, around the 16th. Some are coming earlier. Prior to that, I got a 5 up there, so I'm assuming that's August 5th. And then I hope, and we're or just high five maybe. And then we're just really looking forward to it and looking forward to the experience.
Thank you, Mr. Weathers.
Anybody have any questions about that or any Paula and then Katina?
It's very exciting. This is wonderful. The concern is the 3-year period. Is there, and I don't know if that's resounding, but is there an opportunity for them to be able to extend their stay? Is that process going to be easy? Because I know the process can be very difficult.
Right now, the way we have it set up, it's part of a 3-year program. From what I have gathered, to extend it is very challenging to do. It's not an easy process, but I haven't really gotten there or explored if that's an option or a desire of the people doing this program to do that.
Paula, you need to, just wanted to make sure you turned it off. Go ahead. Before Katina turned hers on. Go ahead, Katina.
So kudos to preschool. They have registered the 2 4-year-old already and have sent them all the paperwork. Wondering if the other principals are aware of children who are coming, like age 12, for example. There is a 17, different age groups, and how has the registration have been facilitated for them or not, so that they know exactly what to expect for their kids.
I know that I could reach out to all the principals. I know that at least one of the elementary principals actually was in contact with me today about their elementary school, trying to get information to help register the students. So I know it's happening at places, but what I could do is reach out to principals and see if they've been contacted and facilitate it. The only thing I don't know is how many of them have school-age children, like the total number. But, someone's waving like she does know. So
I
we'll
don't have an exact number, but we have 6 families involved in the actual process, so who have children. So
okay.
they're varying ages. We don't know their arrival time, and we don't know exactly where they're going to be permanently living, right? All of these things will start to fall into place in the next couple of weeks. And so we don't really know how many for certain will be in the district or not. So there's quite a lot left to be determined. But for those folks who have shared information, then we've facilitated the sharing of the information to the right places, yes.
Thank you.
Anything else on this topic? It's exciting. I actually hope that we'll get a chance to meet the teachers at some point when they start, so
Yes.
that we can let them know how much we appreciate them coming to do that.
That sounds like a great idea.
Beth, you just triggered my thought process, and I want to ask, if the family is living in Franklin, to mention a town, will they be extended the same courtesy as our teachers, that they can bring their kids to our system? Because I imagine it will create even more challenges for those families to have kids in a different town, and et cetera, et cetera.
So what I can say is, there'll be staff members of Windham, so any privileges that staff members of Windham have, they would have the same.
Right. I only know of one example where that's happening, but we can talk more about that. But whatever the Wyndham teachers or Wyndham staff have, these teachers will be the same exact privileges. The last piece of my report is just to let the board members know about Put Local on Your Tray, a program, a food service program that is allowing fresh produce and farm products to get to our families and students. And that's all I have.
Mary, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm very happy to see that, and I know some of the local farms, like I'm in a community-supported agriculture group, and they have noted that they often bring food to the schools, and that is a way to promote farmers. And also, I did notice in the ESSER suggestions, there was better lunches.
Yes, that is-
Nothing about the current ones, but this could be part of getting the better lunches.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, I'm all
It's
set.
in the middle of the winter, everybody will be eating their root vegetables.
That's right.
Right. Okay, thank you for that extensive amount of reporting. Our packet was pretty big this week because there were the strategic priorities and the ESSER recommendations went on for pages. So it was really nice to see that. Thanks. So we're on to committee reports, and Mark could not make it here, but I will just report for the Finance and Audit Committee that we have recommendations to make to the board for action under the action items tonight, and I think we can just hold and do that under the action items. I'm going to ask for an addition of a one item to the action item agenda to reflect our recommendations regarding what we do with the end of year surplus funds. Okay? We'll get to that in a minute. Are there any questions? Okay. Is there, oh, by the way, for people who don't know, there was a meeting of that committee at 5:30 this evening, and that's where the recommendations are coming from. School Planning and Design Committee, Tracy Lambert, the chair of that committee, is not here. Has there been a meeting, Dawn? No, okay. Nothing to report then, okay. Policy Committee, Ilda, it's sort of slow this time of year for committees, but is there anything to report?
Nothing to report,
Okay.
not until September.
There's nothing to report from the Executive Committee. Mary, is there something you'd like to say?
No.
Okay.
Just giving thumbs up.
Okay. And then Paula, anything to report from the Ad hoc Committee for elementary school consolidation?
Well, just briefly, we haven't met as a committee, but there have been informational meetings with Fryer Associates and with central office. Mary had some very good questions for the committee, and Dr. Youngberg was wonderful in answering those questions, so I've forwarded that email to the members of the committee, excuse me, just to let them know that we are continuing our discussions and investigations, and I intend to have the committee come together again in September, and we'll complete our school visits.
Thank you. That's very good to hear about. Is there anybody who has any questions for Paula on her report? Okay, if you guys will indulge me, I forgot to report, I guess I could say it goes under executive committee, but I did, at the last meeting, I did report that we were trying to figure out when we were going to have the retreat, the board retreat on Friday, September 10th and Saturday, September 11th. And after hearing back from most, but not all of you, it's been a really hard group to get feedback from. I discussed with Dr. Youngberg earlier today, and we're going to ask people to reserve Friday, September 10th from 12 to 5. So there will be lunch, but no dinner, and then 5 hours of a meeting. And then on the September 11th, we're asking you to reserve 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., which is the Saturday. And we'll be serving lunch there, too, and some light breakfast items, but not a full breakfast.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? The two times?
Friday, September 10th from 12 to 5, and Saturday, September 11th from 9 to 3, and place to be determined. We'll keep you guys posted, but I wanted to make sure you get those dates and times in your calendar. And the other thing I'd like to propose is that I went over items that we need to actually meet and talk about, and it looks like we could forgo having our August 11th meeting and just have an August 25th meeting. Is that okay with the board members? No meeting on August 11th. Okay. And then we'll meet again on August 25th. There will be plenty, I'm sure, for us to meet about as we get closer to the opening of the school year. We also have to complete our board evaluation, and we'll set aside some time at that meeting to do some of that. So the materials were handed out to you all at the last meeting, I think it was. So I'm asking folks to work on their board evaluation materials during the month of August. Maybe that time that we're not having a meeting on the 11th, you can just sit down and do your board evaluation. I'm just joking. So, okay? Any questions on that? It was in your board packet.
Like a month ago.
Yeah. No, it was in your pack. You got it. Okay, anything else under committee reports? Okay, now we're on to action items. I'd like to ask for a motion to add a number 2 to the action items, which would be approval of the true-up transfer proposal. Moved by Katina, seconded by Jaime. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Abstentions? No, the motion carries. Thanks. So the first order of business is approval of budget transfers. And since Mark is not here, those of us who were at that meeting, including Mark, made a motion that we're going to recommend to the board action to approve $52,600.28 worth of transfers for fiscal year 2020 in the fiscal year 21 transfers. I need a motion on that. Motion made by Katina, seconded by Jaime. Any discussion or questions on that? For Rita is here if you have questions. Okay, all those in favor of the motion on the floor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Now this next one is a little more complicated, and it has to do with the fact that we've known for a while that we were going to end up with a surplus at the end of the fiscal year. And Rita and her team have been working diligently to tell us what those numbers are. So we had a discussion. It's roughly a little over $1.6 million. And the number could change by a couple $1,000 because it's the actual closeout on July 30th of this year. But we're 2 days away from that. And so we think this number is quite accurate. People may or may not know, people who are watching this, that we can't keep that money. We have to give it back to the town. So we are proposing tonight that we endorse a motion to return 1.2 million of those funds to the town, and coupled with a request to the town that when we give them the 1.2 million, they will recognize that we're going to come back and ask them to draw down 100,000 of that to help complete the Kramer move, the Kramer school move costs. Cleanup, it's the cleanup costs. So that's 1.2 million to the town with a accompanying request saying that we'd like to get 100,000 of that back to cover the rest of the costs for the Kramer cleanup. Then we are proposing that approximately $445,441 be moved into the health insurance reserve fund. So that is what the Finance and Audit Committee discussed earlier this evening, and we based it upon recommendations from Rita Parsiak, and we had a pretty full discussion of that at that committee meeting. Does anybody want to make a motion to that effect? Katina made a motion to that effect. Jaime's going to second it. Great, because you were both in that meeting. That's good. So now we can discuss it. Anybody have any questions? Brendan?
The money going back into the health insurance reserve, does that have to go through the town first and they put it back, or would we be doing that now as part of the closeout?
Rita, can you answer that question?
I believe it'd be just as last year. We did the funding. We cut the check and sent it to the town once the board approved the amount.
Does that answer your question, Brendan?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Katina?
Would we request an agreement in writing from the town that that money is actually being placed in the spaces necessary?
Well, once we give them the 1.2 million, they can do whatever they want with it, right?
Okay.
It's the town's money. We will formally, though, make the request for the $100,000. What came up at the meeting earlier this evening is the reason we're going to have to make that request is because that money couldn't all be spent down before the end of the fiscal year. And so there's some residual costs related to that cleanup at the Kramer building. We are not sure, because of the dollar amount, whether we will have to have it approved at a town meeting, or whether or not the Board of Finance can just tell us that's okay, or the town council needs to vote on it. So we need to look into the requirements, because there are rules about expenditures of a certain amount of money or more having to go to town meeting. So I will say, as a former chair of the Board of Finance, I can't remember what the right answer is to that question, and none of us could in the meeting tonight. So we have to get some clarity on that. Regarding the 445,000, you know, if we give them that money for that account, it's going to go into that account. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Are we ready to vote on this recommendation? Okay. All those in favor of the motion on the floor, please signify by saying aye or raising your hands. Any opposed? Any abstentions? By the way, Janet, I'll vote yes on all the motions that we approved this evening. I didn't raise my hand, I realize, so. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, so now we're open to public comment. Is there anybody who would like to speak during public comment? Do we have anybody who's called in? Boy, I guess people either are taking the summer off, love everything we do, or haven't gotten the hang of calling in for public comment. So, you're right. So the final thing is I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at 7:47.
I move, we move.
I was like, Tracy's not here to say it.
I still remember it from Tom and Don.